I've got some final thoughts about the Bills matchup against the Jets. We got to talk about the injuries. And of course, my game predictions are all coming your way today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Friday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day. And as a reminder to you, we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. It's BetOnline, and it's where the game starts. Well, folks, I've got some final things to say about this Bills matchup against the Jets. We're going to talk to Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills for an update on the injury situation, 5 game predictions, and, of course, my NFL draft prospects to watch on Saturday. So let's get into this conversation. And when I laser in on the final things on my mind before the Bills take on the Jets, there's really 3 things that are weighing heavily. The first one is turnovers. And I mentioned this a couple of times this week, but I want to take it a little bit further. Because in a game like this, the X factor, the neutralizer, is turnovers. The Bills are double-digit favorites on the road against the Jets. There's an expectation that they win this game by more than 1 score. The path for that not happening, and this being closer, and even the Jets being able to steal a game, is turnovers. And the Jets defense has done well to force turnovers this season. They've forced at least 1 turnover in every game and 12 on the year. Unfortunately, the Bills, for as good as they have been on offense, they are not taking care of the football as well as they need to. They're turning the ball over on 16.4% of their offensive drives this year. That's 4th worst in the NFL. The Bills have committed at least 1 turnover in every game this season except for week 2 against the Titans. The Bills have committed multiple turnovers on offense in 4 of the 7 games that they've played this year. That is not ideal. That is something that needs to change. I have confidence that it will. But the statistic that is most correlative to winning and losing in the NFL, outside of points for and points against, it is turnovers. And the Bills have won a few games this year where they lost the turnover battle. That is not sustainable. So you have this recipe of a Bills offense that is turnover prone, a Jets defense that has consistently forced turnovers, and a situation where the Jets are going to need some things to go their way to win this ball game. Very, very important for the Bills to take care of the football and not make it easier on the Jets. As far as the Jets and their propensity to commit turnovers on offense, they've done fairly well. And I know that Zach Wilson threw 3 interceptions against the Patriots last week, but they didn't turn the ball over at all in their previous 4 games. So while I think they're more than capable of coughing up the football, it hasn't been that big of an issue for them this year. So turnovers is the biggest thing on my mind entering Sunday afternoon. The next thing that I want to talk about in my leftover thoughts is this Sauce Gardner versus Stephon Diggs matchup. A lot of hype there for the number 4 overall pick in this past year's draft, Sauce Gardner, who's played very well. There's no question about it. He looks like a number 1 corner. High pick for a reason, and he's delivered on that very quickly in his NFL career. And so with that comes some hype about facing Bills wide receiver Stephon Diggs, who's having a great year. one of the best 2 or 3 receivers in the game. I don't want to squash the hype here, but this matchup may not be that much of a matchup. And that just stems from Sauce Gardner being exclusively a left side player. Sauce Gardner plays outside corner on the left side of the Jets defense, and that's it. He doesn't play in the slot. He doesn't go to the right side. So unless they completely change the way they play defense in terms of Sauce Gardner being the left corner and DJ Reed being the right corner, the Diggs versus Gardner matchup is only going to happen as often as the Bills want it to. And I'm sure they're going to have some opportunities to go one-on-one, and Diggs will be targeted against Gardner in coverage. But because Gardner isn't that guy that travels and follows around the other team's number one receiver, we may not see that many head-to-head reps here. So that's something to just keep an eye on. And that's not a shot on Gardner. There's not many corners that do actually travel around. He's a left side player. And so for as often as the Bills want to make Stephon Diggs the outside receiver on the right side of their formation, that's how frequently we will get Sauce Gardner versus Stephon Diggs. The next thing, the third thing on my mind here as we close out this week on the podcast and the Bills take on the Jets. The Jets defense, for as good as it's been this year, and I've given them plenty of flowers this week, they have not defended tight ends well. They've given up 46 catches for 473 yards to tight ends this year. That's the 5th most catches at 46 and the 7th most yards at 473. That's going to be a real opportunity for Buffalo this week. I think this is a game where obviously Diggs and Davis are a big part of it. But Knox and Q Morris are 2 players that I would want to get going a little bit this week, especially with a safety like LaMarcus Joyner, who's a good player, but he's very small. And I think the Jets linebackers are beatable in coverage. And so an X factor for a Bills offense this week is, to me, the tight ends. And I would be scheming up opportunities for Dawson Knox and Q Morris this week if I am Ken Dorsey. The last thing that I want to mention here in my leftover thoughts is really just a newsy item where the Bills made some moves here when it comes to their practice squad. They signed wide receiver Isaiah Coulter and released safety Jared Maiden. And Coulter's a guy that I scouted a few years ago, had a draftable grade on him, so I think he's a good addition to the practice squad. But this does mean that Isaiah Hodgins didn't clear waivers, and he's now on the Giants' active roster to the surprise of absolutely nobody. It felt inevitable that the more the Bills promoted and released Isaiah Hodgins, the more likely the Giants, who obviously know him well with Brian Daboll and Joe Shane and Shea Tierney and Bobby Johnson, they know Isaiah Hodgins. They have a need for that type of player. It was only a matter of time before the Bills weren't able to sneak him through waivers and he would go to the Giants. And I know that comes with some disappointment from a lot of people who are pretty high on Isaiah Hodgins. And of course, I would have wanted to keep him for as long as possible, but this is just the reality. When you have the type of depth that the Bills have, the roster ebbs and flows of the season are just going to expose players, and this can happen. And it's happened this year already. It's happened in previous years, and so there's just this possibility. And so it's unfortunate that Isaiah Hodgins' run with the Bills has come to an end, and I think we're all rooting for him to find some success with the Giants, but it just wasn't going to work out here because of the numbers. And fortunately for the Bills, they haven't had injuries that are that long-term where it really opened the door for Hodgins to stick on the roster. And so all the best to Isaiah as he makes his way over to New Jersey to play for the Giants. This episode is brought to you by Prediction Strike, the world's first sports stock market. You can now invest in professional athletes just like stocks. It's a lower risk alternative to sports betting, and athlete prices move based on performance and supply and demand. So if you invested in Jalen Hurts 1 year ago, you'd be up over 48%. Rashad Penny is up 154%. Kyle Pitts is down 44% after a slow start to the season. There's tons of other options for you to look at. You can invest in 4 sports, so not just the NFL, but UFC, NBA, and MLB. And everyone knows you should be investing, but why not invest in what you actually know as a football fanatic? So download the Prediction Strike app and use code LOCKED for a free share when you sign up and make a deposit of $20 or more. That's promo code LOCKED for a special one-time giveaway. Prediction Strike will choose one person who signs up with code LOCKED on and make a deposit to win 100 free random shares. That could be worth up to $3,000 if you get lucky and receive Josh Allen shares. Invest in what you know on Prediction Strike, the stock market for sports. Can we pause for a second? Okay, we're paused. Great, because you got to try this. I'm talking about Built Bar's new reimagined flavors. They've got cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, coconut brownie topper, white chocolate peppermint granola. It's Built's take on the granola bar, so it's more filling and still insanely tasty. And candy cane brownie puff, Built Puffs are like biting into the universe's most delicious cloud. First off, for anyone who hasn't tried Built Bars before, they're literally the best tasting protein bars ever. And they're revolutionizing nutrition as we know it with 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein, and shockingly low sugar and calories, only 130 calories. So just sink your teeth into that first bite and it'll change your life forever. I'm not kidding. There will be a time before you try these new Built flavors and the magical, wonderful time afterwards. You're probably wondering which new flavor is my favorite. That's an unanswerable question, to say the least. They're all unbelievable and they're all different. So you can try a mixed box and try all 5 flavors for yourself. You got to try this. Go to built.com and get 15% off your order right now by using code LOCKEDON15 over at built.com. I'm joined now by Kyle Trimble. He's a doctor of physical therapy. He runs bangedupbills.com. The Twitter handle is at bangedupbills. He joins us each week to talk about the injury situation ahead of the Bills game. And unfortunately, the Bills came out of the bye, and we got some injuries to talk about, especially on the defensive side of the football, where you can make a case that the Bills' best 3 defensive players have some level of concern for this game. So let's get into it. And I'd love to start with Jordan Poyer, who has an elbow injury. I think I heard the word re-injury this week. Let's get into Poyer and what we need to know about that situation.
All right. So to recap, Poyer hyperextended his elbow, his left side, back in training camp, missed pretty much all of training camp, came back and played in a brace the first few weeks of the season up until this game, which is important to note there. During the game, I had even noted that he ditched the left hinged elbow brace in the game, which was good to see. But unfortunately, Poyer was playing pretty well, and then he tried tackling Robert Tonyan on the last play of the third quarter. So if you recall, the trainer started running out onto the field afterward, after this play, and then so it gives you an idea when it happened there. Of course, you can also look back at the time stamp there with that. But he tried tackling Robert Tonyan. His left arm went up and back like it would be like a baseball pitcher as it hit Tanyan's thigh, and he went down. Most of the reports were saying that he was kind of talking with trainers on the sidelines briefly, was shaken up a little bit, went back in. He did finish the defensive series, which is, I think, about 2 or 3 plays until I believe there's an interception. So he said he felt a pop after the game. He was seen on the sideline with an ace wrap with his arm extended and just kind of moving around there and whatnot. He did go for x-rays as well there too. Poyer also said that this is the same side of the injury, but it's a different injury. So looking at everything, and I, detail out the video on Twitter and I do my articles and whatnot, I thought he suffered an MCL sprain or UCL sprain, the type you see in, keep in mind though, I know people strike fear because they start thinking Tommy John, they start thinking, the worst case scenario here. Jordan Poyer does not throw baseballs. Jordan Poyer does not throw footballs. So when you're looking at that, it is concerning, but he's not having to do his overhead motions that put all that stress on the elbow there. So they qualified him as day-to-day. Ian Rappaport qualified him as week-to-week, which was interesting because, of course, he's one of those guys that knows everything. And so it's interesting the wording we're seeing from that, one from the team, one from the national reporter. And then we're seeing that Jordan Poyer didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. He's unlikely to practice Friday. I highly suspect he's not going to play on Saturday because we know from the research, most elbow injuries, they can come back and play with the same week, but sometimes they miss about a week. That's the average and according to the research. But I don't think we're getting a full picture here. I think we're not seeing the full picture with regards to the injury, with the team saying day to day, but Rappaport saying week to week. I think we're something in the middle here. I don't know the full details about this, but I think we're going to see more. This be a issue not just this week. I think this might extend a week, 2-3 weeks here, like they said, the week-to-week designation. So could he come back and play with the brace and maybe take some time off a little bit? Certainly, but this isn't the end of the story, and I'm curious to see how this is going to play out. But there's something going on here, and I want to see more what happens with that.
Well, it doesn't sound like he'll be in the mix on Sunday from what we're gathering here, and then we'll kind of see as it relates to moving forward. And unfortunately, this safety tandem, Micah Hyde's obviously out for the year, and Jordan Poyer's been going through it seemingly the entire year, including the preseason. So hopefully this gets right, and then it's a done deal, and we don't worry about Poyer being injured. But it's been an unfortunate reality of this season. Let's move on to another Bills defensive player, linebacker Matt Milano, an oblique injury, didn't practice on Wednesday or Thursday. Seen some video of him doing some high knees and moving around a little bit, but hasn't practiced. What can you tell us about Milano?
I have a more rosier look out about Milano than I do about Poyer. I'll give you that. So I did see the videos on Twitter there. They did look good. He's doing a lot of high knees, sprinting. He's moving around pretty well, but he's not doing any rotational components, which is what the obliques do. They help flex the trunk. They help rotate. I'm not expecting to see him doing rotating activities out there anyway, but he's been moving around pretty well. We know that there's not a ton of great research on oblique injuries from what I found because I dig into this stuff. I know from a historical standpoint that John Miller back in 2018 missed one game with an oblique injury. We know that Stephon Diggs back in 2020 suffered an oblique injury, I believe in warmups prior to either week 17 or it was prior to it was week 17 because then he was questionable going to the Colts game. So he played through an oblique injury. Of course, that's a playoffs. So those guys are going to play through anything there. So we don't have a lot of historical context. I wouldn't surprise me if Milano misses this game, especially being do not participate Wednesday and Thursday. That usually doesn't trend well for most players to play on Sunday, but we have seen exceptions to that rule. So if this is a game that you're going to have to miss Matt Milano, I'd take it against the Jets versus any other team.
Yeah, well, here we're moving down the list of the best defensive players in the team. So far, it doesn't look good for these ones. Let's get to the next one. Von Miller, kind of an interesting situation where he had a veteran rest day and no designation on the Wednesday practice. You figured he sat because of veteran rest. That's normal. And then Thursday comes and he doesn't practice because of an ankle. And so this is one that I think caught a lot of people by surprise. I know you've done some research. Get us caught up on Von Miller, if you will.
All right. So Von, it looked by video to suffer a right low ankle sprain. I'll get that right out of the way there. What happened was 1:30 left in the fourth quarter. Von comes off the edge. He's trying to stay in the play. Greg Rousseau tries taking Aaron Rodgers down when Rodgers rolls out to the left. Rousseau starts falling down Rodgers' torso and grabs his legs. And in the process of sliding down, his legs come flying out. Vaughn tries jumping up out of the way to avoid Groot's legs hitting him, and he kind of steps over funny and lands on his right leg, and you see the ankle roll in if you go on slow motion. And then he was slow to get up, and you could see him putting more weight on his left side initially before coming back up. He was able to stay in for one more play, and then it looked like as though the defense rotated out, so there wasn't anything crazy going on. And then the fact it was so late in the game, they weren't putting a injury designation out from the PR staff. So that explains why we didn't hear anything about it. So a low ankle sprain usually isn't too worrisome. This did happen on Sunday. I'd like to see him try Friday at some point. That's the problem sometimes recording early with this stuff there, but we're going off the information we have this time. I would anticipate that he would at least attempt to play if it's not feeling too bad, but he doesn't need to practice a whole lot in order to play. So once again, if this is a game that they don't need him for, great. Just offensive line is banged up already. And we have a lot of depth on the defensive line as is if you need to sit him, but I could see him being limited to maybe just one side of the line if he does play. But it's hard to say whether he's going to play because we don't know how severe it is. By video, it doesn't look that severe, but we've seen things be wrong in the past there. So if he's not going to play, this is a good game not to play.
Well, and I think you made an important remark there in that we're recording this on Thursday early evening. And so before Sean McDermott speaks on Friday, which is usually a big moment for the injury stuff where he kind of spills the beans on what's going on. So this is based on what we know to this point, and I'm sure McDermott will have some more information on Friday. Would like to close on this. Let me say this about the Jets. We're not really going to get into the Jets because everyone on that 53-man roster looks like they're going to play except for Corey Davis, their wide receiver, who hasn't practiced all week with a knee injury. So the Jets enter this game pretty healthy with the guys on the roster. I know that they have a ton of guys in Breece Hall, Elijah Vera-Tucker, George Fant, Mekhi Becton. They've got injuries, but in terms of the players that they expect to have available this week, they should all be there except for wide receiver Corey Davis. So let's finish on a couple of Bills players that have been limited all week. One of them being Tremaine Edmonds with a heel injury. And Spencer Brown, the ankle. It looks like he's ramping up a little bit, but still a limited participant on Wednesday and Thursday. Some quick thoughts on both of them.
So Edmonds, don't really know a whole lot what's going on. When I think of heel, I think, was there some type of a hit to the heel, something to get stepped on? The Achilles also inserts at that heel bone there. So that could be a possibility that he's dealing with some type of strain there. But historically, I've seen them, when they say Achilles, and I don't see them saying heel when it's Achilles, but it could be. So I believe he played 100% of snaps. I don't foresee him missing this game, especially if you don't think Milano is going to be playing. I would hate to miss both Milano and Edmonds in this case. So I'm pretty confident that Edmonds is going to play unless something crazy happens, but he's limited both Wednesday and Thursday. As for Brown, he's coming off that week 6 ankle sprain against the Chiefs. He said he sprained it pretty bad. He didn't play last week, which was expected. But looking at the video, he just doesn't look confident in the ankle. He's not pushing off the right ankle well enough. His kick slide back doesn't look great. Just nothing about it screams confidence. Could he play? Yeah, he could. But if he was going to play, I'd keep him in reserve role as an emergency option if you need to, and put David Quessenberry back out there, who I believe is dealing with some type of injuries by himself because he did go for x-rays after the game, but he's not in the injury report, so we don't know what's going on with him. So I could see Brown sitting out again, but if you're going to play him, don't start him.
Yeah, sounds like a reasonable plan. The Bills have Justin Murray and Bobby Hart at their disposal as guys that can play some tackle. So I don't think they would stretch it when it comes to Brown. So could be a situation here where the Bills take on the Jets without their starting right tackle, without their starting weak side linebacker, without Von Miller starting edge, and of course maybe even both of their starting safeties in Hyde and Poyer. So adjust your outlook accordingly. I'll share my predictions here in the next segment, but we do appreciate you giving us some of your time, and I certainly hoped we didn't have as much to talk about coming out of the bye, but here we are. Fingers crossed for a little bit less on our plate next week against the Vikings. But Dr. Kyle Trimble, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. LinkedIn has simple tools like screening questions to make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates qualified that you want to talk to faster, Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Bills Mafia, we all know what the sound of that is. It's the glorious sound of a table breaking in half from a body slam, and it's something Bills fans do best. Now listen to this. Do you know what that sound is? It's a chip breaking mid-dip in guacamole. Not so glorious. The thing is, some things are meant to be broken, like tables at tailgates, but chips and dips? Definitely not. That's exactly why the team at Zach's Mighty Tortilla Chips set out to create a chip that can actually handle dips without breaking. Talk about game-changing. I love these chips. My wife and I, we have dips all the time. We actually had some friends over recently for Halloween, and we made chili. And, of course, we had our Zach's Mighty Tortilla Chips, and everybody fell in love with them. They're so good. They're sturdy, crunchy, and delicious, and they're perfectly seasoned and made from organic Flint corn grown in upstate New York. You can find Zach's Mighty Tortilla Chips at all Wegmans locations in the chip aisle. Zach's Mighty, break tables, not chips. All right, folks, it is prediction time here on this podcast. I have 5 predictions for you regarding the game on Sunday between the Buffalo Bills and the Jets. Number 1, the Bills put up the most points against the Jets defense of any team so far this season. Talked a lot about the Jets defense this week. I'm impressed with it, but I think the Bills are going to have a nice day on offense. And I think part of that is going to be how the second half went for the Bills, where they scored just 3 points against the Packers. Josh Allen threw 2 embarrassing interceptions. I think they're out for blood this week, and they're going to put up a bunch of points. So the most points that any team has scored against the Jets this year has been the Browns. Week 2, they scored 30 points. I think the Bills score at least 31 on Sunday. Number 2, the Bills put up the most yards against the Jets defense of any team so far this year. The most yards surrendered by the Jets this year was again in week 2 against the Browns, 405 yards. And the Jets have played really good defense of late. They've limited opponents the last 5 weeks. The last 5 weeks, opponents are averaging under 300 yards of offense against the Jets. That's very good. I think the Bills put up some yards this week to go with their points. So, again, more than 405 because that was the season high already allowed to the Browns by the Jets. So I think the Bills have at least 406 yards, which would be like 110 more yards than what teams are averaging against the Jets over the last 5 weeks. Number 3, Zach Wilson, sacks plus interceptions will equal 6 or more. So however it's going to work, I think the Bills will sack and intercept Zach Wilson a combined 6 or more times. So it could be 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, 3 of each, 5 and 1. I don't know how you're going to get there, but I think that number is going to be more than 6. There's a lot of emphasis on Zach Wilson playing smarter this week. And last year when the Bills sacked him 9 times, that was him playing smarter and not throwing interceptions. Well, instead of throwing interceptions, he just took sacks. And I think that there will be some level of that again this time around. Again, not sure how we get to 6, but it'll be at least 6 when you add up the sacks and interceptions as it relates to Zach Wilson. For number 4, I want to lean into what I talked about in the first segment about tight ends. I think you're going to see a season high in receiving yards for Dawson Knox. His high so far this year is 41, week 2 against the Titans. So I think you're going to see at least 42 yards or more. But the point that I want to make here is I think a productive game is coming for Dawson Knox this week against the Jets. And then lastly, do I think the Bills win the game or not? I do. I do think the Bills win this game. I'm a little bit concerned about some of the injuries on defense. Offense, this team looks healthy and ready to go. I think they're going to score. I don't think the Jets are going to be able to score with them. As long as they don't have costly turnovers and allow the Jets to keep it close, I think the Bills will handle the business on the road and get their first AFC East win of the season. All right, let's talk about my prospects to watch on Saturday. And we're going to do a little bit of Bills-specific, big game specific. So we're going to go all over the place here. But I want to take you on a journey on Saturday if you want to watch college football with an eye towards the NFL draft and, of course, the Buffalo Bills. So at 12 o'clock Eastern time, ESPN2, let's watch Minnesota against Nebraska. And there's two players here that I think are very Bills specific. One's not a new name for you. This is a guy that I really like. Minnesota center, number 60, John Michael Schmitz. I think he's a plug-and-play quality NFL starter. Would love for him to be the Bills' starting left guard next year. Size, athleticism, power, technique. I'm a big fan. So check him out in this ball game. For the Nebraska side of things, wide receiver number 3, Trey Palmer. I think when I consider what the Bills can add to the receiving core, it's a speed threat, a legitimate, you can't run with me guy down the field. That's Trey Palmer. He's having a big year, transferred over from LSU, and I think he would offer a really, really fun speed dynamic to the Bills wide receiver core. At 3:30, this is the game. This is the one you want to watch. Number 1, Tennessee at number 2, Georgia? I don't know if I have that down correctly. It's Georgia. They might be 3, so don't hold me to that. But it's on CBS. 2 undefeated SEC teams. We've talked a lot about both of these teams so far this year, and I hope you've enjoyed watching Tennessee because, man, they're really fun on offense. And they're pretty doggone good on defense as well. I think they're going to win this game. I do. Got a little cash on the money line for the Vols this week, being able to go into Athens and win this ball game. I don't think Georgia can score with them, and Georgia's got some injuries on defense that I think are going to be pretty troubling from them against a really high-powered, high-octane Vols offense. So I'm just going to give you a bunch of names here because this is going to be a scout's delight, as we like to call it, in terms of watching NFL talent in this ball game. From the Tennessee side, both wide receivers, 11, Jalen Hyatt, we've been talking about him, unbelievable speed. So everything I said about Trey Palmer, apply it to Jalen Hyatt, and I like Jalen Hyatt a lot more than I do Trey Palmer. So he's a burner. That's a big play machine. Cedric Tillman should be healthy for this one. He had a high ankle sprain against Akron early in the season. He had a little bit of a surgery to help recover. Played last week on a pitch count. He should be full go against Georgia. And again, this is Josh Heupel's offense. And Josh Heupel was at UCF when Gabe Davis is there. And Cedric Tillman plays the Gabe Davis role for this Tennessee offense. Big, physical, ball skills down the field. I like Cedric Tillman a ton. 2 offensive linemen to watch. Number 75, Jerome Carvin, who's their left guard. I think he's a versatile interior guy with size and technique. Number 58, their right tackle, Darnell Wright. We've talked about him a few times. I think he's a guy that you transition over to guard if you draft him and you're the Bills, and you have a big, powerful dude that can create some displacement up front. And he's been good in pass protection. I think he's going to be a nice player in the NFL. On defense, watch both of their edge rushers. Number 6, Byron Young. Number 9, Tyler Barron. Byron Young's the better player. He's got a great story. Was working at the Dollar Tree. Winds up playing a little JUCO football during the COVID year. The practice highlights get out. All the teams start offering him, including LSU and Alabama. He goes to Tennessee. He's having a great season this year. He played well last year. He's not super big, but man, he is got some good length. He's really loose, and he's really flexible, and he's really, really explosive. And so he's a big-time riser for me. I think the Bills will like his story. And if they want that type of pass rusher, that this is a guy that they can look into. All right, on the Georgia side of things, they're pretty loaded with talent as well. They have a left tackle, Broderick Jones, number 59. I think he's the best tackle in the class. And so going up against Young and Barron should be a really nice matchup for him. I don't know that he'll be available for the Bills when they pick. Certainly, I don't look at him as a player that I would move from left tackle, but as a player that I think you should be aware of as a football fan, Broderick Jones. Center, Cedric Van Pran. I think he could play some guard. Check him out. He's a cerebral player. Good technique, good control, good mobility, good power. Tight end, Darnell Washington, wears number 0. I think he's got a chance to be a first-round pick, but he's like 6'7", 270 pounds. Phenomenal blocker, and he's got a lot of catch radius and appeal as a pass catcher as well. And then a guy we've talked about a few times, safety, number 29, Chris Smith. Can play in the nickel, can play deep, smart, tackles, ball skills. a very cerebral player. Then at 7 p.m., Fox Sports 1, watch 24 Texas against 13 Kansas State. There's some Bill-specific players in this game that I think are worth your time. Texas running back number 5, Bijan Robinson. I think he's one of the best 10 players in this draft for sure. Size, explosiveness, pass catching ability, inside outside running ability. I mean, for the size that he is, for him to be able to work laterally and cut is really special. I don't know that he would make it to the end of the first round where I expect the Bills to pick, but I'll be honest with you, as a guy who doesn't love drafting running backs in the first round, this is a type of talent that moves me off of that, right? I'll go ahead and say it. If Bijan Robinson's on the board when the Bills pick in the first round, you will have no disappointment from me if that's a selection for Buffalo. He's that type of talent. They have another good running back, Roschon Johnson, number 2. He's a converted quarterback. Not super dynamic athletically, but a cerebral player that can catch and work downhill. And they've got some guys on defense. 99, Keandre Coburn. If you're looking for a one-tech, he's a physical guy that can control the line of scrimmage. 98, Moro Ojomo. He's just a redshirt sophomore, but if you're looking for a more explosive interior defensive lineman, he's a guy that's appealing. I don't know if he comes out this year, but he's one to watch. And then linebacker DeMarvion Overshown. Kind of a reckless player, but he's got size. He can run. Kind of a run and chase type player with speed. So I don't know if he's a great fit for the Bills, but from an NFL talent perspective, he's interesting. Then Kansas State has some guys that I think you should watch. One of them being left guard number 50, Cooper Beebe. Physical people mover in the run game. I think he's a little tight, doesn't have a ton of range, but if the Bills want that mauler that can create displacement and anchor against the run, Cooper Beebe's worth looking at. They do have a couple guys on defense as well. Defensive end number 91, Felix Anudiki Uzoma. All right, so kind of a challenging name there, but a relentless pass rusher that I really like. And when you think about the Bills and defensive end, they're pretty set, but Shaq Lawson's an expiring contract, and A.J. Epinesa is going to be entering a contract year. So it wouldn't surprise me that much if they pick the defensive end. And really, we should never be surprised if Brandon Beane invests in the defensive front. Then they have a corner, Julius Brents, number 23, that looks like a mid-round pick that I don't know that the Bills have a huge need at corner, but a player from, hey, look, you want to watch NFL players on Saturday? Check out Julius Brents. I think he'll be a solid mid-round pick for somebody. So those are the prospects to watch this weekend. All right, folks, the hay is in the barn. We've done everything we can here on this podcast to get ready for the Bills and Jets on Sunday afternoon. So enjoy football this weekend. Enjoy the Bills on Sunday. Go Bills. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. I look forward to catching up with you again after the game.